On an ordinary August night in 2014, the air at a traveller site in Sagat, dubbed The Ranch, was pierced by the heart-wrenching screams of children. Their father had just been brutally gunned down, riddled with at least 6 bullets. After attending a wedding, he had planned to unwind at home, but fate had a different path. Around 11 p.m, as he watched the rows of Tralee, a masked man armed with a handgun infiltrated the property through an unlocked door. With ruthless precision, the assailant shot the father through a patio window, hitting him multiple times in the upper body. This horrifying act unfolded right before the eyes of his terrified wife and children. As the assassin fled, emergency services were promptly alerted. Gardaí swarmed the scene within minutes, and a helicopter circled above, scouring for any sign of a getaway vehicle. Amid the chaos, a guarder administered CPR to the fallen man, battling to save his life until paramedics arrived. The aftermath was a scene of utter despair. The victim's children cried out in anguish, their voices echoing with the words, oh my daddy," as they were gently led away. Despite the valiant efforts to keep him alive during the ambulance ride to Tala Hospital, he succumbed to his injuries shortly after arrival. Who was the man who was so brutally murdered, and why was he targeted? It is believed that he was killed by an INLA gang member after being entangled in a major financial dispute with a prominent dissident Republican earlier that year. Additionally, he would have clashed with a high-profile Dublin businessman known for his strong connections to dissident Republicans and drug dealers. But why did the INLA focus on him? They had been targeting him and his crew throughout the year, attempting to extort money. The campaign of intimidation included shooting up at least 2 traveller family homes in Tala and the kidnapping and beating of 1 man. The motive behind these actions became clear. The murdered man was none other than the traveller gang boss, Fat Andy Connors, who, along with his gang, had amassed millions. Before his brutal murder, Connors was largely unknown to the general public. However, within certain circles, he was the go-to man for disposing of stolen goods, deeply entrenched in a network of professional burglars and the traveller community. Connors was a second-generation professional burglar. His father, Michael Miles Connors, was a career criminal with convictions dating back to 1959. Even at the age of 74, Miles was actively involved in crime, earning his 94th conviction in 2013 for acting as a getaway driver during a break-in. He passed away 2 years after his son. Fat Andy Connors was part of the notorious Subaru gang, also known as the Cigarette Gang or Gypsy Gang, along with his cousins Andy Cock Wall and Edward the Bullet Connors. The Subaru gang terrorized the country for years. Notorious for their smash-and-grab raids, they earned their nickname due to their use of high-powered cars to make swift getaways. Their typical modus operandi instilled widespread fear, particularly in rural areas, where the Gardaí struggled to cope. The gang targeted convenience stores and filling station shops, primarily seeking cigarettes. The operation began with a car crew cutting off alarm systems and removing padlocks with angle grinders, then leaving the site to maintain the appearance of normalcy. Next, a second car, often a robust vehicle like a Volvo 740, would reverse into the shop shutters, smashing them open. This car would then drive off, making way for a high-speed getaway car. The gang would quickly enter the shop, break into the cigarette cabinet, and fill the boot with stolen goods before fleeing at reckless speeds. Gardaí, restricted from engaging in such high-risk pursuits, were often left helpless. They brazenly challenged the Gardaí, sometimes stopping mid-chase to threaten the pursuing squad cars, displaying a shocking lack of fear. While rarely participating in the burglaries himself, Connors was the mastermind behind a network of criminals traversing the country's motorways. Sometimes hitting 5 different locations in a single night, they amassed millions. On a single night, they could steal between 70,000 and 100,000 euros worth of cigarettes, which were as good as cash and sold within hours. In addition to cigarettes, they also targeted houses, stealing savings and jewellery from elderly residents. At one point, it was estimated that the gang comprised about 200 individuals, with a hardcore of 80 directly involved. For every active member, there were at least 2 or 3 accomplices providing alibis, moving stolen cigarettes, or hiding goods. Connors and his crew made fortunes, living lavish lifestyles that included luxury cars and expensive champagne. Besides leading the burglary gang, Connors functioned as an underworld banker, lending money to criminal figures for illegal enterprises and laundering the proceeds of their robberies, which terrorized businesses and residents across rural Ireland. In 2004, Connors settled a bill with the Criminal Assets Bureau for €150,000. At that time, he was suspected of making millions of euros through various criminal activities. Although officially he dealt in horses, land, and caravans, he was believed to be involved in drug trafficking and other forms of criminality, serving as a bankroller for illicit operations. He eventually became one of the country's most notorious criminals. Before moving into the ranch, which was the house where he was ultimately murdered, Connors had lived in a caravan behind a mansion on Blessington Road in Saget. This property, known as the Villa, featured 20 caravans, an indoor swimming pool, a sauna, and 5 bedrooms, and was once valued at €3 million. The villa was his first showcase property, though he primarily resided in that caravan on the expansive grounds. When CAB demanded €160,000 in unpaid taxes on unexplained income, Connors was forced to put the villa up for sale. However, despite his efforts, he couldn't find a buyer after settling with the CAB. In the years leading up to his death, Connors was a prime target of Operation Fearclaw, a massive Garda initiative against burglaries nationwide. This major push led to dozens of Connors' closest associates being brought before the courts. In the period before his murder, Connors was pressuring Jim Mansfield Sr.'s former estate, claiming he was owed money he had invested in dealings with the late millionaire. Behind the scenes, Mansfield Sr., who died in January 2014, was laundering money and washing stolen goods for known traveller gangs, paramilitaries, and some of the country's best-known criminals. Fat Andy Connors had amassed around 30 convictions, including trespassing, assault, possession of an article with intent to cause injury, larceny, malicious damage, possession of drugs, and driving without insurance. In August 2006, he was jailed for 3 years for reckless endangerment after firing a shotgun at a burial in a graveyard in County Wicklow to mark the death of a young relative. While Connors fired the shotgun into the air, another man with him fired it twice into the crowd. A headstone was hit, but nobody was injured. Fat Andy was known for his lavish lifestyle, and his headstone at St Michael's Cemetery in Gorey, County Wexford, reads, "Big Fat Rich Andy Connors." He was buried with a €40,000 Rolex watch and laid to rest in a gold-plated coffin worth €28,000. Thousands of euros were spent on floral displays which included a mobile phone, a box of cigarettes, a flat-screen TV, and a BMW. Connors' extravagant final resting place made headlines in 2015 when a crane was used to erect a 6-foot-high marble statue of Jesus Christ on his grave. The statue, estimated to cost over €50,000, was erected despite protests from some locals unhappy with its size and structure. After his death, Gardaí found nearly €1 million hidden in his bank account. Following Connors' death, his widow Anne was hit with a €2.5 million tax bill, and CAB was granted judgment mortgages against several properties in her name. However, instead of focusing on these troubles, she transformed their property, the ranch, into a sprawling illegal halting site, renting out chalets for €1,500 per week. Additionally, she enlisted the help of Martin the Viper Foley to strong-arm land as payment for debts she claimed were owed to her. That was it for today's video. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see our next videos.